And then subsequently his son, the great Rajendra Chola I, who not only ruled south of India, if you look at the actual map, and he had an excellent navy. That's why one of our Indian Navy ship is named after INS Rajendra, okay, to pay tribute to him. Raja means the title, the king's title. King himself, Raja. But this Kunjara Mallan is the chief architect of the temple. Okay, so this stone inscription says that, so he is the chief architect, and the king gives his own title to the architect, saying that he is henceforth known as a Raja Kunjara Malla Perandacha. So that means that he valued engineer. So this is a seed vault in Norway, so where they keep, okay, so all these seeds in a protected place. But we have better way of storing seeds because copper, what Manna was talking about, it's antibacterial, antifungal. Okay, so it naturally, okay, protects our seeds, okay, intact. Yeah, Vanakkam, Namaste. Thank you for inviting me, Professor Ishwar. I'm really glad to be here and then seeing a lot of my godfathers over here sitting here. And so this talk I just designed for 10 minutes, very popular talk. I'm actually a trained welder. Okay, I'm a certified welder, and not in air, in open atmosphere, also underwater welder. So I happened to be doing this work accidentally in 2016 when I got a call from my director's office saying he got a letter from High Court. Okay, so someone should be going there to certify one stolen idol and see whether that idol is actually stolen from a temple, because there is a pad idol was there. So I need to go and check the composition of the idol and then see whether these two idols belong to the same temple. So that's how I ended up doing this work. And after doing that, then a lot of requests came, and I ended up studying thousands of idols which are actually currently in practice in various temples in Tamil Nadu, to check the compositions and also to study the dimensions so that we can keep record of it. And then subsequently, if anything happens to the practicing idols, in later part, we can always go back to these records. And doing so, in 2020 January, I ended up doing one important work, especially in restoring one important artifacts in Tanjavur temple. So I'll just show upon all these in 10 minutes to inspire, how our ancient metallurgists created those beautiful artifacts, especially the young minds, and to get value about our history. And then to take it forward, what we are learning from this process, how we are going to use it, and how personally I'm using it, and to construct one similar structure in the place very close to Indore as well. Okay, so this outline of my talk, just to give a history about the ancient, no, it's not really ancient, about 1200 years before. Okay, so it's ancient for India is 5000 years before. That's ancient, right? So a couple of kingdoms which evolved starting from 700 AD until 1350. So they were prolific in terms of the various knowledge generations and making artifacts out of various, the metals we have been hearing from Professor Manna and of course Professor Ramanathan also. I'll just touch upon the small history for the children and who are they and where are they from. And then subsequently, some example, idols, what I have investigated, I'll show, and they are specialists, why they are so special. So then the one investigation which I carried out on repairing or restoring the casket, which is actually adoring the top of the great Vimana of Tanjavur temple. So then some lessons what we learned, I'll just touch upon that. Okay. So just a quick refresh about the Chola Empire. So they were ruling the southern part of India. So from about 9th century until 13th century, and in 11th and 12th century they were in full glory. So entire South India as well as their influence was spreading until the Bali Islands, Papua New Guinea. So the entire eastern Asia was actually under their influence. and they are one of the best seafarers. They're one of the strongest navy we had during the period of Rajendra Chola. We'll come back to that. And they are also excellent, in record keepers. Okay, so they did what they did day to day in records, and they wrote it so in stone and also in a copper plate. Okay, so we could see, I'll show a couple of examples of copper plates which I read, and so for my own research, right? So in minute detail, okay, they could do that. And if you see these two idols, which were actually stolen from India, last year we brought it back, okay, from our effort. And this is the actual idol cast by the king Rajendra, the Nataraja Chola himself, and is one of his queen consort, okay, Lokama Devi. And these idols were actually stolen about 100 years before. Whether it's looted or stolen, we still were questioning. And if you look at the metallurgy of this such a structure, it's phenomenal. What is so special about the Chola, the bronzes, is actually close to pure copper. Okay, the concentration of the copper, what you see over here. So when we measured most of the practicing idols, there are almost 99% copper and some amount of zinc, what was Ramana was talking about, which is difficult to extract. So these idols were actually cast by a process which is still we are practicing, which is known as lost wax process. In some part of Tamil Nadu, especially the district of Kumbakonam, traditionally they still carry the knowledge of casting from the metals, especially the copper and bronze alloys, what you see over here. And this is how he looked. So this is his own the structure, what you see over here, dimension, to a scale. The king, the Rajaraja Chola, who was actually about in 7th generation of the later Cholas, and his wife. Right, so, and he is left with so many artifacts and his history. And what you see over here is actual painting in the great temple of Tanjavur, where he was actually listening to his guru, okay, Karurar. And if you look at the actual paintings and the models what he created, and a great resemblance in which they could actually reproduce in the metallurgy the structures what we actually the king looked like. Right, so the pinnacle of the Chola kingdom is between 985 and 2014. Where the Rajaraja Chola I and his son Rajendra Chola, okay, so were actually taking the Tamil medieval or the later part of the history to world over. Okay, so the various history artifacts what he found, and this is the next generation of Rajaraja Chola, who actually was ruling, and then subsequently his son, the great Rajendra Chola I, who not only ruled south of India, if you look at the actual map, and he had an excellent navy. That's why one of our Indian Navy ship is named after INS Rajendra, okay, to pay tribute to him. Again, if you look at this idol, his own, okay, idol, metallurgical idol, the copper idol, what he actually made himself. And he also influenced the various kingdoms, what you see over here, in the East Asian countries. And if you go to Bali, right, so when I visited Bali, I was amazed to see, okay, some of the artifacts which are actually resembling what I was researching, okay, in my work during Chola period. So in 2019, when I went to International Institute of Welding conference in Bali, right, so the customs what they were using and some of the idols what they were actually practicing from then on were actually had resemblance to what we had in those times in Chola Empire between 9th to 13th century. So the great Rajendra Chola, okay, so he ruled about 40-45 years this part of the country, and he left with the treasures. Okay, so I referred earlier about the copper plates. Okay, so this is one such copper plates what the Rajendra Chola himself asked his court to write about one donation he made to a temple near southern Tamil Nadu. It's called Thiruvalangadu copper plates of the Rajendra Chola. And what you see over here, it is not only making that copper metal, but also making inscription as a diary. Right? See over here, the number of plates. So these plates describe how a temple, this temple, what is there in Thiruvalangadu, should operate day by day. And this plate also contains his donation, what he made, okay, to this temple. And this is one of the very famous, the Nataraja idols, which is still there in the temple, okay, Thiruvalangadu. It's practiced And it is one of the first stamps India released after independence, okay, carried this idol. So what is interesting with these copper plates are all, again, these copper plates are actually made close to 99% purity copper. And we looked at all the time the casting process, but the Chola were also mastering the thermomechanical processing of copper. Okay, so making the copper as thin as about 2 millimeter, a uniform thickness, and then an etching process to write, okay, the scripts on these copper plates. Right, so this copper plate, one of these also have very interesting anecdote or the history what Chola himself wrote. So when his expedition went to Godavari River, crossing Godavari River, right? So he mentioned about how he took bath in the river Godavari by applying sandal, okay, on an evening time. And that also actually mentioned in one of the copper plate to show that how he was glorified, okay, so during this expedition. So from these, we could learn how these casting processes are actually made, but unfortunately, so we don't have much information about how the primary copper was produced in those period. The most of the knowledge is available from these copper plates, how these casting, the idols were actually made. Okay, so I was talking about the thermomechanical processing of these, the copper plates, what they were made, right? So one artifact which is very difficult to access for most of you. In fact, I was fortunate to access. Right, so this temple, some of you must be kids if you know this. So this is a great temple. It's one of the United Nations heritage site in a place called Tanjavur. Right, so the architecture belongs to Dravidan or Chola Tamil architecture. Right, so this is a wonder. All of you should visit this temple. Okay, so it is an architectural marvel. What our ancestors could do about 1100 years before. Right, so this temple was built by the father, the Nataraja I, okay, between 1008 to 1010. So the Kumbhabhishekam, so that's the inauguration, or to bring the temple into action, we do that Kumbhabhishekam. Okay, so that is the actual inauguration nowadays, you can call that. Right, so the kumbh, which is there in the top of this temple. Right, so it's very difficult to get access, but okay, so it is another marvel, the wonder, what it is actually there on top of this temple. Right, so if you look at this entire thing, it contains so many idols which we can access it. What is interesting to see is the kumbh itself. So why this temple is becoming so much interesting is the amount of wealth of information it carries. The walls of temple, if you look at, all inscripted by, okay, how this temple was actually built and who worked on this temple, including this very smallest detail. The king, okay, wrote and etched in the stone walls of the temple. And it took, for one, ASI is doing great job in recording all these inscriptions, but when you want to read, okay, so this entire thing, one would spend years time to reading all this information what is actually stored in this temple wall. Right, so if you look at this, okay, this photo was taken by my daughter, so when I took her there, and this red line, it actually says that Raja Kunjara Mallan. Okay, so the title Raja. Raja means the title, the king's title, king himself Raja. But this Kunjara Mallan is the chief architect of the temple. Okay, so this stone inscription says that, so he is the chief architect, and the king gives his own title to the architect, saying that he is henceforth known as a Raja Kunjaramalla Perindacha. So that means that he valued engineer, right? Because this is a marvel what this king, okay, and managed to build, but the person who actually built is this chief architect, Raja Kunjaramalla Perindachan. To honor him, he gives his own title, okay, to the chief architect. And the other interesting the inscription what you can find is also very tiny. He did not leave even a smallest, okay, the worker, the lady who served buttermilk to the sculptures who are doing the temple. Her name is also inscribed. Her name is also written. that her duty is to serve buttermilk to the people who are working in the construction, the duration, how much money how much gold she was given for serving buttermilk. So everything was written in this temple, the wall. Right? So when I was actually called, why I was called? So in January 2020, okay, so there was regular, there is routine Kumbhabhishekam, so the events would be carried out. In 1983, there was an event, and unfortunately, the Kumbh, which is actually on top of the temple, was actually not brought down due to various reasons. And people are worried about the integrity of the Kumbh, which is actually adoring this Vimana. Right, so it is again one of the treasured artifacts which is very difficult to access, because to access that one would climb up the entire, right, the tower. It's about 280 meters height. Okay, so we'll have to climb up and then to bring it down. Right, so we were asked to do that with the help of ASI and the IGCAR Kalpakam. So we had to go and get that Kumbh so that some rich restoration can take place. So we climbed up, okay, to look at, okay, so to be a surprise, the various other aspects of this temple also came to me, right? So I was standing in the top of the Vimana, okay, in January 2026. I took this picture, and what first thing I noticed over here, so when I took my phone compass, okay, looked at the orientation of the temple, it had three entrances, so one over here, and other one over there, other one over there. It's all 0 degree. Okay, so precisely, if you look at my campus, so this is east entrance, 0 degree east. This is north entrance, 0 degree north. And this south, okay, so sorry, this is north and this south, right? So it's all 0 degree orientation. So precisely they calculated the knowledge of astronomy is phenomenal, right? So 0 degree orientation, extremely symmetric structure, and what you see over here, right? So we were looking at this massive Kumbh, which is actually adoring the top of the Vimana. The date of this Kumbh must be from the date in which the temple was inaugurated. How do we know that? Again, the later part, so when Marathas were actually coming back, after, say, the Cholas, the Pandyas were there, and then it comes under Vijayanagara Empire, and Vijayanagara Empire from the Madurai Nayakas, and then in 1750 or about 1700, okay, so it comes under Maratha influence. So the Sarfoji I, the first Maratha king, okay, so who was actually grandson of the cousin of Veer Shivaji. So he takes care of, they come to Tanjavur, and Tanjavur becomes part of Maratha kingdom. The Sarfoji I has written, the inscripted, okay, so what is over here, and he has carried out, okay, repair work during his reign in 1715, the Sarfoji I. So he carried out repair work of the Kumbh which was already existing. Therefore, so this Kumbh was there even before, most likely when the king was actually inaugurating. So what is actually interesting over here, this Kumbh, okay, so it has the height of about 3.46 meter, okay, and it's weighing about 180 kilograms total weight if you look at, right? So this structure generally, okay, so it's refurbished once in 12 years, that is the Agama. Okay, Agama means the rule says that once in 12 years, this Kumbh should be refurbished, and then subsequently we'll have to put it back. That is what actually happening in normal, conventional Kumbhabhishekam when we do for a temple. So that's what we actually do. But accessing this is very difficult. So what we were actually saying that the ASI also clarified after 1953, so it was never brought back for repairing. Wow. Right, so if you look at this structure, it's made of about 99% copper coated with gold. So the gold coating was actually periodically carried out by later kings as well, but the actual structure, initial, it's made of pure copper, about 99%, 0.3% zinc, okay, and 0.25% tin, okay, the composition, if you look at the actual composition. And why do we need this Kumbh for the temple? Most of you, even when I saw on the way temple, almost all the temples have that structure on top of his Vimana, right? Okay, so the actual purpose, I don't know how many of you know about it, right? This Kumbh, the casket, we store seeds. Okay, the purpose of this Kumbh is to store the seeds, Navadanya. Okay, so we actually keep it inside. So when I opened it, I found this this my fingers. So this is a kodo millet, okay, what you call varagu in Tamil. So varagu is one of the important seeds we actually keep it. We found about 120 kgs of navadanya and the varagu inside. So why do you keep that? Why do you need to keep those seeds over there? So it is like a seed repository, a seed vault, right? So even the great famine strucks and the entire city is flooded. Okay, so all the seeds are lost. We can still get the seeds for subsequent agriculture civilization, right? So, and you must be seeing such an image. Okay, what is this? So this is a seed vault in Norway. So where they keep, so all these seeds in a protected place. But we have better way of storing seeds because copper, what Manna was talking about, it's antibacterial, antifungal. Okay, so it naturally protects our seeds intact, and we can store all these seeds which are actually required. Even if anything happens, a great famine, we lose all our seeds, we can still get seeds for our civilization. Right, so what is the problem? The problem is again, so there are a lot of challenges in restoring the structure. So this is not a cast structure, it is a thermomechanical process. So this is about 3 mm thick copper and then subsequently gold coated, I think in about 1953. What is over here, but because of some improper practices, a lot of corrosion has happened. Especially if you look at the later part. And what is over here? So these are all lightning arrest, and then subsequently the lights were all installed and a lot of galvanic coupling. Later we found out, and then we advised ASI to do the safe practices and how we can avoid such damage. But then why I should do this? Because fortunately I had some experience in repairing of these copper structures by using techniques which are actually conventionally we call this as welding or even additive manufacturing. So we repaired carefully these structures. I'm not going to detail about how I repaired the metallurgy of it. Maybe some other time I'll give a talk about that. So these cracks were subsequently from the knowledge what we acquire from our teachers. So we did repair, and then we put it back. And this is what just the day before Kumbhabhishekam. So imagine, so I climbed up to these scaffolds. These scaffolds are just steel pipes, and there is no support. So we had to go up. Fortunately, we could go up, and then we installed. So this is after restoration. So I was just doing the final quality check, and these were subsequently loaded in the temple, and then we did the final Kumbhabhishekam. So coming back to one last point about safeguarding our treasures. And if you go to museums, later you would be going to abroad. So most of these Western museums, if they don't have 3 important artifacts, one of them is of course Egyptian artifact, and the second is metal artifact from India, especially Chola bronzes. The museum value is completely reduced, lost. So our idols are one of the most stolen artifacts in the world. So if you go anywhere of the European museums, Louvre or Amsterdam museums, and you would see our Chola bronzes, our idols are all decorating, right? And this one of the exquisite cast structure I happened to study. So this is actually a stolen idol. It brought back to India. I belong to a temple near Kumbakonam, and look at this quality. I mean, the workmanship, phenomenal. So what the actual artists or the metallurgists have done is also the veins, the arm. So they are all selectively sulfidized to look greenish, because the copper sulfur, when you selectively sulfidize, so it becomes greenish. So even veins were all selectively polished or prepared. So therefore these idols were all treasured items in Western Museum, are all they're stolen. So again, we kept going back all these records in various museums all over the world, and then check the compositions or get the details so that we can get our treasure back to our country. So we did a number of work. In this aspect, we recovered with collaboration with Tamil Nadu Police, number of idols, and we actually then mapped with that. So one such small story I want to tell before I conclude, right? So how we managed to crack the nexus of this idol smuggling. So there is a temple near the place called Valley, right? So the temple is in very pure Tamil name, Palavur. The actual temple is known as the Narumbu Natha temple. So about 13 idols were stolen in the year 2010. Okay, so out of them, so this Nataraja idol was smuggled by 2 thugs, okay, overnight. And these 2 thugs, okay, were trying to take it out, thinking that this is a gold idol, and they can melt and make the gold out of it. So when they actually, break the temple and goes inside, okay, and then take the idol and runs away in 2-wheeler, they meet an accident. So they meet an accident. In that, okay, so one of them dies next day. The other person managed to escape with the idol, and that idol, then he hides it, and thinking that you can cut open and then melt part of it to make money out of it. So he cuts this hand. Okay, he cuts this hand, melts it, and he found that there is no gold. Okay, so then what he thinks that it is nothing worth. But there is another notorious guy. So he finds that there is an old idol. So by the way, the year is about the later Pandya, after the Chola falls. So this must be around 1300 AD. Okay, 1300 to 1400 AD. So this one, the guy who actually smuggles the idol, comes to know about this theft, and he buys this idol and takes to London. And there is another famous so-called art restorer. And that guy in London, his name is there, right? So I don't want to name the name, because of the other reasons. So that guy, okay, carries out small brazing operations. So brazing means, okay, so he casts this arm part of it, and then he joins with the rest of the thing, and then subsequently the smuggler sells this idol to a New York museum. Okay, so the moment this idol goes to New York museum catches fire. Okay, and then subsequently, so the guy who smuggled, okay, he gets caught by the police, and he goes in 2017. And then subsequently, this guy who restored is also get caught by Interpol from our police. So why I'm telling all this story is not confidential, because all of them died. Okay, that's why I'm telling. Neil Sperry Smith, guy who actually repaired this idol, gets caught by the Interpol. And that guy all thought that, so far we are not aware of this stolen, the theft. So then all decided to dump this idol back to the temple. Okay, this idol comes back to the temple, okay, 3 years after it was stolen, right? And then the priest who performs, he finds the idol in front of the temple, he takes it and starts doing it. But now the only evidence the prosecution has is the cut and then the joint, the weld it is made. So I was called as a welding expert. Okay, so I know all this history about Chola's compositions. So then immediately I started checking the composition. The 2 things I noticed. So one is over here, you see. Okay, so this is an disguised bangle. On the other hand, it is not there. Okay, so this guy who restored this idol in London. Okay, so he made this well joint, thinking, he disguised into a well seam, but the composition of our Cholas are always pure copper. Okay, so 99 or later Pandyas 99. This is and copper, some alloy. The composition I still have that. So moment I looked at the composition difference, okay, so this part of the arm is not part of the original idol. So then I made a detailed report and found out that that is the only evidence in which all of them are caught. That guy, Neil Sperry Smith, he was actually arrested by Interpol. The guy who ran the racket in India, he died 4 months before in Chennai prison, right? And then another guy who actually smuggled, he also dies in jail. So whomsoever touched this, all died within 4 years of time, right? So now the idol is again decorating in the temple, right? So, and we were actually, broke the big racket, which was actually there. So a lot of lessons, what we learned personally. So I'm using it, okay? And so you see these 2, the idols. So this is Statue of Unity and Statue of Oneness. and I'm helping L&T also. I'm a consultant. The welding procedures built for these idols are all, we are part of L&T's work group. So next year you may see about 80 kilometers from here, the Statue of Oneness. The knowledge what I learned by looking at all these old the artifacts and metallurgy. Okay, little bit what I learned. Okay, so we'll also use it to build our mandate is to these statues should stand for next 500 years. So the knowledge of copper smelting in Tamil Kingdom. Okay, so it is phenomenal. So some are we lost. Okay, so we can use modern techniques for refurbishment, and then what is important, paramount, is safeguarding and valuing our treasure. Okay, so I acknowledge my team, especially for repairing the caskets. Dr. Venkataraman, we formed a team in IGCAR Kalpakkam, and of course, a lot of knowledge I learned from the current Prince of Tanjavur, so Excellency Babaji Rao Bonsley, okay, and then the other, including ASI. So with this, I conclude talk, and I'll be happy to take some questions later in the discussion. Thank you.